Today's guest is Jeff Plush. He's a long-time sports executive, got, significant roots in the early days of professional soccer here in the U.S., did do a stint as the commissioner of the NWSL early on in that league's formation. And he's kind of been, in some of the largest, most noteworthy organizations in sport in the world. IMG, to name one. Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, to name another. As you all know, Kroenke owns SoFi Stadium, the LA Rams, the whole arena complex in Denver, the Colorado Rapid, the Avalanche. So very significant sports holdings. And I want to say he owns also a Premier League team.
Arsenal Football Club.
Yep, there you go. Arsenal, yes, not for the faint of heart. In any event, Jeff has most recently been the CEO of USA Curling. We've all just come off Milano Cortina. Curling got more than its fair share of television coverage, and it was pretty interesting and unique. And we'll get Jeff's perspective on that. So I can't thank you enough, Jeff. Welcome to the Best Boss Ever podcast.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me, Carl. Looking forward to this. And I've had a great ride. We've got lots of stuff to talk about, both soccer, Olympic space. The world is a very exciting time for sports in our country and really everywhere.
It is. We know, because we're old enough to know, that none of us ever gets where we are on our own. So the real primary question here, and it will inform the rest of the session, is given your success, and that there's no other word for it, over the years, as you were starting out, who, perhaps more than one who, was the best boss or leader or mentor you've ever had? Who was it and why?
Yeah, look, as you say, you have any success comes from the people that you are allowed to spend time with, that you learn under, the mentor you take you under your wing. And so there would certainly be more than one, but I'll have to say was Bernie Mullen was my first boss, and you learn quickly how to work in a really collaborative environment. I mean, Bernie is, the professor of sports management. He attacks leadership like a mentor, like an academic, like a professor, and always there to teach, always there to be a sounding board, and to this day he is. So I think I've had a very blessed relationship with Bernie now over 30 years, and I know I'm one of many who've had the opportunity to work for him, and whether it was we were in minor league hockey when I started with Bernie, all the way through his years at NBA and starting Teambo, and then on to the Hawks, and then launching his own company. A lot of people have been touched by Bernie's mentorship and friendship and leadership, and so I was very fortunate that my first boss ends up being someone so impactful. I'm very thankful.
Well, he's one of those unsung heroes in the world of sport. I mean, you ticked off a few of his stops, but anybody who's been in the sports business as long as you and I have, and there are still a lot of us kicking around, know the name Bernie Mullen and have great respect for him. So you were in minor league hockey when you worked with Bernie, and was there a key learning, or what were the guardrails that he set up that helped inform you as you grew your career?
Yeah, look, I think it was here in Denver. It was the Denver Grizzlies International Hockey League, which doesn't exist any longer. In a period of time, obviously this predates the Avalanche because they came after our success. And so Denver was a much different city, still very much a Broncos city, and then the Nuggets, and the Rockies were just coming online. And so we were the fourth sport in town, and Bernie treated us and challenged us to act like we were major league. We didn't really think of ourselves as a minor league hockey club. We thought of ourselves as the best hockey club in Denver. And there's a different distinction to that, is how you treat yourself, the standards you hold yourself to, the accountability, the professionalism, the ambition to be great. And we went from an idea, and I started selling tickets, for $0 an hour, and had many a phone call. This is the day of smiling and dialing for dollars, and many a call where the person on the other end of the phone said, "We don't have a hockey team in Denver." Just having to explain that yes, we do, and come out and give us a chance. And eventually, as the season wore on, we were sold out. We'd have 18,000 people in the old Nicholas Sports Arena. Won a championship. Our coach was Butch Goring, the Islanders' great player that won 4 Stanley Cups. So we kind of were able to hold ourselves to a really high standard and have great success. And the marketplace really got excited about it, to the point that the Nuggets ownership realized there was an opportunity to buy the Quebec Nordiques and move them to a great hockey town. And that happened, and then the Avalanche were born. So we were here in Denver for one season, and then moved to Salt Lake City. And so it was an unbelievable first year, and a great opportunity to learn, great opportunity to spend time in minor league sports, where I always advise people today is like, don't turn your nose up at the opportunities that come from minor league sports, because you get to do everything, right? Selling tickets by daytime, doing game operations at night, leads into sponsorship opportunities, all these things. So I couldn't have asked for a better launching pad for my career, with both the people and just the experience. It was pretty special.
That's a great story. You mentioned Salt Lake. It's funny. You moved to Salt Lake, and a couple of years ago, the Coyotes, loosely, I guess you could say, all the players went to Salt Lake, and they've now got a very substantial franchise in Salt Lake City. The NHL, the NBA, also in Salt Lake. Salt Lake is one of those towns that super prosperous, growing, crazy about sports. 34 winter games going to end up in Salt Lake City. It's all good, and we can come back to that in a second, right?
Yeah, Ryan Smith is a really committed, passionate owner, cares about the community, which is, takes all those things. The sport is fantastic. Hockey will do very well there. The Jazz have for a long time, obviously. And so that was a good move for the NHL and for that franchise to find a new home. But yeah, it's, hockey was my first sport, so it was really exciting. And to this day, spend a lot of time, up too late sometimes watching overtime hockey games this time of year.
Well, as a hockey fan, and I got to watch both of them, the hockey finals in Cortina or Milano were extraordinary. Irrespective of the aftermath, both those games were as good as it gets. And as I said to a friend, it's just one more little tweak between the U.S. and Canada, right?
Yeah, look, there's just nothing like hockey at the highest level when everything's on the line, because every time that puck comes close to the blue line, you're on the edge of your seat, and especially as it gets to the third period or overtime, it's nothing like it. And they're tremendous athletes, both the men and the women, and we did very well. So it was a wonderful experience for USA Hockey. Congrats to Pat Kelleher, who is a great guy that runs that, and hockey's doing very well in this country.
No doubt. Well, listen, from your earliest days with Bernie at a minor league hockey club, quickly walk us through your next few stops, because I do want to spend a minute on the NWSL experience, and I also want to spend a minute on your USA curling experience, because those two things, at least at this moment in time, are much closer to, if you will, the national/global spotlight than they've ever been. Women's soccer and curling, go figure. Those two things are obviously not juxtaposed to each other. They're unique and separate, but you've had a significant role in both of those. So get us to how you got to the NWSL.
Yeah, look, so, quickly, very blessed, again, worked for Bernie, the Grizzlies, got the chance when the Avalanche came to town, got hired by Sean Hunter, who ran the Nuggets and the Avalanche at that point, so another great boss. Spent 3 years there, and then got hired by a guy named Brad Hunt, who was the leading Olympic sports agent in the world at the time, and he had his own boutique agency called Gold Medal Management, and Michael Johnson was probably our biggest athlete at the point in time, coming off of the 96 games, and so really exciting time. IMG ended up buying us, and so then had the opportunity to work for Peter Johnson at IMG. So really significant people, great leadership, great experience and mentorship, and so really fortunate every step along the way. When IMG bought Gold Medal Management, I didn't really want to move to Cleveland, my then girlfriend, now wife, and so I wanted to stay in Denver, and so I had the opportunity to go back to the Nuggets and Avalanche when Mr. Kroenke bought the organization, and spent 11 years there. The last 6 of which was as running the Colorado Rapids on the MLS board, led to our acquisition of Arsenal Football Club and on the Arsenal Media board. So, spent time getting that all put together with David Dean, who was vice chairman of Arsenal, but also founder of the Premier League along with Rick Perry. So just every step along the way, it's all about people. And I think I've been super blessed to be around working alongside and for great people. And hopefully have tried to develop, the type of organizations that celebrate that as well. And so it was great. Once MLS run ended, I was doing my own consultancy and kind of figuring out what's next. And the opportunity presented itself to be commissioner of National Women's Soccer League, which got the phone call from Dan Flynn, who was chief executive U.S. Soccer at that point, really to ask me if I had any ideas of who he should be reaching out to. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, look, I'd be really interested. That was just an unbelievable experience. Again, back to that time frame where the question then was, is women's soccer going to make it? No league had made it past the third year. We were in our third year. But once you spend time with the sport, with the young women, 200, started with 180, then we added a 10th team. So 200 fantastic athletes playing at the highest level. We were the best league in the world at that point, and maybe are again. The women's league in England is doing fantastically well as well. But it was a great experience, and I think we're seeing it today. You look at where NWSL is. We just had 63,000 for the Summit's home opener here in Denver, which was an amazing, wonderful crowd, beautiful day here in Denver. And then you see the Haslams yesterday announcing they're coming to Columbus at a $200 million valuation. The league has exploded. All the credit in the world to Jessica and their ownership group, and it's here to stay, and it's here to continue to grow. And like you mentioned, women's sports just generally are growing as they should. Tremendous role models. They play the sport at a really high level, and I think that's the most important thing, is to realize it's sport played at the highest level, and you can be really excited about that, and then really proud of the role models that they have always been as well. So it's a lot to be encouraged by, and still got to work hard. I think that's the reality, is for all sports, it's still lots of work, lots more to do, lots more to contribute. But it's in a very good position today, and it's fun to watch.
So what years were you the commissioner at NWSL?
15, 16, 17.
And how old was the league when you stepped in?
15 was our third season. We were still, when I first started, it was me and two others. Small band of 3 people running the league, which is challenging to be honest. But you had committed ownership, and you had great players and committed partners from both U.S. Soccer, but the Canadian Federation, the Mexican Federation were partners. And so it was a good time. Nike obviously was a hugely important partner of ours, not just financially and the kit, but just the spirit of their support was really important.
Yeah, those relationships are you can't understate how important it is. Not just the money, but
just the opportunity to be thought of as professional and treated to a certain level. I mean, over my shoulder here is the NWSL ball from one of the championships that a guy named Rafael Ortega at Nike, who's just a prince of a guy, was adamant that we have to have a ball. We can't just, you've got to treat this league like we do every other league. And so he led that endeavor to get that done. And Nike, just a great partner, not only just supporting the sport, but just there as a friend, a sounding board as you try and grow. Because there's always days where it's more challenging than others. And so you need that level of support.
Right. Well, I'm interested in a couple of things. One, we're on the eve of the World Cup here in the U.S. We're recording this. We're inside 8 weeks to the first ball drop. U.S. opens in L.A. on the 13th of June. We're recording this on the 22nd of April, so it's right around the corner. But let's talk a little bit about the early days of league formation. The World Cup comes here in 1994, Men's World Cup comes here in 1994. And on the back of that very successful tournament, MLS starts. They launch, I want to say 97, 98, something like that. Maybe earlier, 96.
Yeah.
But they struggle, right? The halo of the World Cup very quickly wears off. Those early days of MLS are legendary. Anybody who wants to go back and, do the math. I mean, they bring Don Garber in the late 90s. I want to say 98, 99. He came from NFL. He was a senior exec at NFL Properties, and he's been the commissioner for 28 years. And there was a moment in time, I know this because I recently spoke with Don, where everybody, and I mean everybody, who was involved with MLS was really worried that the league wasn't going to make it. There was a moment in time where Phil Anschutz owned seven MLS franchises, which is kind of unheard of, right? So, I mean, one could argue that Mr. Anschutz single-handedly propped up the league through its darkest days. Good news is they came out the other side, and, you know, the last franchise that was was here actually in San Diego, where I live, $500 million, $500 million that was paid for the SDFC franchise. So parallel path that to the extraordinary World Cup win in 1999 by the women, the Mia Hamm, the Brandi Chastain, the Michelle Akers. I mean, it was unbelievable in the Rose Bowl, close to 100,000 live bodies. And yet it takes 15 years for the NWSL to actually get its footing. I don't help walk us through why it took so long.
I think it's hard to kind of compare the two. I think. I mean, you had the FIFA World Cup in '94, the largest event in the world, right? And so, without any question, soccer had been established everywhere for a long period of time, and we'd had our own missteps. You know, NASL launched and did fantastically well for a brief moment in time, and then didn't last. And so I think sometimes women's soccer was held to an unfair standard. But also it takes long-term committed ownership, it takes infrastructure, it takes stadiums and access to revenue streams to help try and balance the books. It takes training infrastructure to be able to perform at the highest level. So all those things, they just don't happen overnight, and so it does take time. And if you actually look at, I think, where NWSL is today, which is in their probably, 11th year compared to MLS at 30, you know, where you said, you know, a $200 million valuation yesterday for Columbus expansion is unbelievable. So I think the trajectory is, we'll just say it's equal, you know, it's right there. They're doing wonderfully. And it's funny, I just finished reading Alan Rothenberg's book, which talks all about 94 World Cup and the launch of MLS and all of the people, you mentioned some of the players, the Allens and the Randy Bernsteins and Mark Abbott's of the world who were there from kind of day one. And then Don's come in and he's just, you know, there's probably not too many good enough adjectives to describe the job he's done, because we are a fantastic league, respected the world over with. And then valuations, Kansas City just sold for a $700 million valuation. So it's continued to grow and expand, and probably beyond people's dreams, I think, even, at least at this point. I mean, it's something to be applauded, and, you know, I'm super proud to have been there for 6 years and kind of see that evolution. And then back, I do want to make sure you mentioned arguably Mr. Anschutz. There's no argument, you know, there's no single person that we need to be more thankful of than Phil Anschutz. He kept the league alive when it needed it. I'll share an anecdote because it's so classic, and but there was that period of time where it was very, very dicey, I guess. And
dicey's a good word.
They had to put together a budget, and basically there was a budget like hang on by the skin of your teeth or double down and say, look, we're going to do what we need to do to invest in this sport and this league to be successful. And Mark Abbott tells this story about it was time to go around the room, and it just, you know, he went alphabetical. And so the first person he asked for a comment was Mr. Anschutz, and Phil was all in. And I think once you saw that, I think everyone else around the room's like, if Phil's all in, we're all in. And so they did it, and it's exciting. It's fun to look back on. Those days were a lot of fun, and I was very blessed. I was after that hard period of time, but even coming on the board in '06, it was still, we were the first ownership group. Mr. Kroenke was the first owner after the Anschutz, Kraft, and Hunt all had multiple teams. And so it was still a really small group of people, but if you look at the talent, you know, obviously you have Mr. Anschutz, Robert Kraft, Clark Hunt, Lamar Hunt, But yeah, Tim Lewicki and Steve Cohen and Dan Beckerman and Anshu,
And the list goes on, right?
Sunil Gulati, and so it was for me, it was a blessing. Like I got to be in that room and it was learn a lot, see a lot, and so it was fantastic.
Right. Well, the next 5 years here in the U.S. as it relates to soccer are, I think, going to be the high watermarks historically, which is, I don't say that lightly. That's not an easy thing to say, but you've got World Cup men happening this summer. There will certainly be a halo after that. The challenge, I think, is a couple of things. I'd love to get your opinion on one concept in a second. But what most people don't really understand or recognize or even know about is the Women's World Cup is coming here 5 years down the road, right? In 2031, which when you look at where NWSL is now, then leveraging off the Men's World Cup, which I think is a fair assessment and a logical thing for Jessica Berman and her whole enclave to look at doing. Then you throw Cindy Parlow-Cone in there, and it's all pointing toward the next spike, if you will, in women's soccer as we prepare to host the World in 2031. Your take on that?
It's going to be unbelievable. Obviously, the summer is going to be a lot of fun. The quality of play should be fantastic. We got some geopolitical headwinds, to say the least, I think, which could impact attendance in certain markets. But I believe the momentum will grow over the course of the tournament. And you start to look at some of the games that could happen in the knockout rounds really early. I mean, you've got potential France, Germany on the 4th of July if things go the way I think they could. Unbelievable, right? And
Right.
I have Argentina playing Uruguay, which would be kind of fun. And so I just think there's so much opportunity for people to, if they love the sport, then they're obviously going to really enjoy it. If they don't know much about it, they're going to have the opportunity to see the world come together. There's nothing like a World Cup. It's just a great celebration of sport, of culture, of humanity. And so that opportunity will present itself 5 years later. And, I had the chance to go to the World Cup, the Women's World Cup in Canada in 2015, a wonderful experience in Vancouver, but we're going to be able to replicate that again. And what'll be fun is who knows which stadia they'll use, because I think there will be an opportunity to sell a lot of tickets, but we also have purpose-built buildings like the one in Kansas City, like the one coming online in Denver. So we'll see if it's a more smaller venue, urban environment, or if they'll go to the big NFL stadiums. Either way, I think it's going to be an unbelievable experience. And look, the U.S. does a very good job of hosting these types of events. We've got great stadiums, great infrastructure, planes, hotels, all the things that are great for events or conventions or whatever it is. So it should be just a real celebration of the sport. Our national team will still be very good. We're quite young, actually, so I think there's lots of players. We'll be very, very competitive. We'll be one of the favorites. So it's fun days ahead for the sport, no question.
It is. It's lots of good things to look forward to. One more soccer question. When you look at the Premier League, there's the practical market-driven concept called promotion and relegation. So if you are in a 20-team league or a 30-team league and you're at the bottom of that league at the end of the season, you are relegated to the next lower division. And then the leaders in that lower division are promoted into, in this case, the Premiership. It's been, I think, a very significant missing part of what MLS has been and the way it's grown up. It's not without its challenges, but I know that the concept of relegation, which up until a year or two ago was 100% no bueno, nobody was going to pay attention to the concept of relegation. It's starting to get some traction, and I would love to get your perspective on it from an MLS perspective, but more broadly, how it helps fandom, leveraging the game, and the risk of, throwing a game because, your star player might not be feeling too good that day.
Yeah, look, I think it's getting momentum in social media and conversations with fans, which I think is always fun to talk about. I still think it's 100% no bueno at the league level. I think you've got owners who have invested in this league at a $700 million valuation with the construct in place that there is no relegation. I don't think that kind of valuation would be happening if there was promotion relegation. B, I'm no lawyer, but I have to think that there'd be a certain level of angst about trying to insert promotion relegation at this point. And even in Europe, look, there's no question it's better from a fan point of view and from an excitement point of view, and it adds a lot of intrigue to the bottom half of the table. But you have a lot of losses over there and a lot of clubs that are not in a great place, kind of betting always on the next opportunity, betting on promotion and highly leveraged. And so I think it takes a much more honest conversation about whether it's great for the game. It's great for the theater of it, but is it great for the long-term security of the sport? I'm not sold on that, actually. And so I'd be really surprised if it ever came to pass at Major League Soccer. Ever's a long time, obviously, and it might be well past my time on this place called Earth, but we'll see, I guess. I'm intrigued by what USL is going to do, and I think the opportunity to do it within their own pyramid could be really interesting and fun. But again, the idea of a USL, second or third division club, then all of a sudden be ready to compete at MLS, not just the player wages, but the infrastructure, the stadia. It's just not that likely overnight. And so I don't see it happening personally, but if it does, it's a long way.
I got it. Well, the debate will rage on, perhaps not rage, but at least it will be discussed, because the parallel loose is 5 years ago, you were not going to envision private equity getting into collegiate sports. And now they're figuring out how to do it. And there's a lot of backstopping. There's a lot of, hand wringing, but nonetheless, the power of sport, in quotes, whether it's capped and limited supply, as it is with the 5 major professional leagues, 6 when you count NWSL and others, the WNBA. Those are, the supply is capped, it's limited, which is one of the reasons private equity likes it, because nobody's going to relegate me, right? That's the professional sports side. Put the debate aside regarding relegation in soccer. But the PE money, private equity money that's poised to flow into collegiate sports, principally media rights, sponsorship rights, monetization rights, et cetera, is not an uninteresting thing. Now, with what's happened in collegiate sports over the last 5 years, with NIL, with the transfer and the just shuffling deck of cards called the Power 5 conferences, which aren't anymore. It's kind of like the Power 2 conferences. Sport in our country is going through sea changes virtually at every level.
It's college sports. It's both sides of the coin a little bit. It's phenomenal. The passion runs so deep and the excitement level. And I was very fortunate. My youngest daughter is at Indiana, so she's a senior at IU and got to experience a once in a lifetime type thing this year, just a phenomenal experience. And so anything can happen, I think. And NIL and the transfer portal has changed things. So now Indiana's a football school, which you would have never thought as, us growing up. But at the same point, I went to Arizona, and my oldest daughter went to Arizona, and we always used to play USC and UCLA because we were in a conference together, and now we're playing West Virginia and Cincinnati in the Big 12. And it's, great schools and great road trips, but still just not the same. And so it's just very weird how much it's, in a lot of ways, it's broken. PE could be a huge influx of capital, but they've got a period of time where they are going to be looking for their return, and sometimes that's very short term. And so I worry about the exit in certain situations. There's no question that it's going to take a lot of smart people, a lot of thoughtfulness around how to do the right thing for college sports in the macro, not just football and basketball, which are the most attractive and the most monetizable. And I am worried about it in the Olympic space, what it does to the Olympic sports, that the NCAA system has been really foundational to the Olympic sport movement, not just in the States. you have players or athletes from around the world coming to our universities to train and experience sport at the highest level of college sports. So I'm worried about that. So there's a lot to be interested in and excited about, but it's going to take some really thoughtful thinking to make sure we create the right platform for our sports to be successful long term, and not just be looking to monetize it and kind of asset strip the universities.
Right. Well, all really good points, and you and I are not going to solve this in this conversation.
I'd like to be a part of solving it. So
well, I mean, that's not an uninteresting point, because I would be as well. So let's shift our focus now to Olympic sport. We're fresh off Milano Cortina. We talked about the men's and women's hockey teams both coming away with gold medals in amazing games, both against Canada. LA 28, 2 years and a couple of months away. The Winter Games come back to Salt Lake in 2034, which is a nanosecond, right? I mean, it'll be here before we collectively know it. All that said, you have a very sort of deep understanding of Olympic sport, how it works, particularly in this country, as the former CEO of USA Curling, which, as we said at the top of the show, got more than its fair share of coverage on television, which was really quite fun to watch. Shuffleboard with brooms and shoes that sort of stick on the ice. You could probably show us a curling shoe.
That I can show you my stone right there in the corner, but I don't have a curling shoe line around.
Okay. So the NGB system, as we know it, is what it is. I mean, it was initially launched back in the late 70s. Ted Stevens wrote the Amateur Sports Act. It created kind of a superpower for the USOC, now the USOPC, but it also greenlit individual sports. Those that chose to come out from under the then AAU umbrella, form their own national governing bodies, and take responsibility for rules, regulations, championship events, selection of Olympic teams, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop there, turn it over to you as a former CEO of an NGB, and I'd love to get your take on what's working, what's not working, and what your outlook is, call it, over the next 8 years. 2026 now to 2034, with 2 Olympic Games coming back to the United States.
Well, look, the NGB space it's challenging. 55 NGBs running the gamut from the USTA, which has the U.S. Open and is a financial juggernaut, to USA Basketball and USA Hockey, which have the NBA and the NHL helping to build those sports and show those sports on a nightly basis, to smaller sports like curling or biathlon or table tennis, or these things so they're really completely different organizations, even though they're in the same ecosystem, much, much smaller, really heavily membership based, which is fantastic, but also becomes, you kind of have dual priorities, right? You want to compete at the highest level, at the Olympic level, and you want to be on the podium because that's part of your mission with the USOPC, but you're also a member organization, and about how you help grow the sport at the most grassroots of levels. You got a lot of different, and they're all NGBs or nonprofits, and there's boards, and so you have a lot of competing ideas and interests, and so managing all of that is both a lot of fun and challenging, and comes back to your first question about best boss. If you have a great board chair like I did at curling, Courtney Schmidt was phenomenal, then you're working in a really positive environment, and so that is good. The Olympic movement, there's nothing really like it. The opportunity to wrap sport and competition and athleticism in the flag at the same time is unlike anything. And so when you get the LA Games here on our soil, it's going to be a tremendous experience. The venues, the marketplace will support it fantastically well. The athletes will step up and deliver the kind of storylines that only the Olympics delivers. And so that'll be exciting. And then there'll be that fantastic runway of 6 additional years between LA and Salt Lake. And I'm excited about Salt Lake. Look, they did it before and they did it really, really well. And so they're only going to do it again at a really high level. We need snow. I will say that. I think living here in Colorado,
tough year this year. Tough year.
We had a very, very bad year, and I'm worried about our future opportunities to host Winter Olympics. So we'll see. Fingers crossed that Mother Nature helps us out in that period of time. But the Olympic movement, look, it's here to stay 'cause it's incredibly important. But the Olympic movement and NCAA kind of at the same time there's a pathway to, I think, figure it out and come together to support each other's strategies going forward in a really thoughtful way. And I think that needs to happen, and sooner rather than later, because the small NGBs, it's just a very tough putt year after year. And they don't all have the greatest media value in non-Olympic years. Even curling, which is one of their favorite sports, right? If you talk to John Miller and Gary Quinn, they love curling because there's so many sheets, there's so many hours, they can plop it in across different networks. There's just tons of opportunity for programming. And then the storylines, and it's men and women and mixed, and so there's a lot of exciting things going on there. But how do you stay relevant in the non-Olympic years? How do you monetize in the non-Olympic years? I'm excited about what's going on with the Rock League, the new curling league that Nick Solsky is launching, and I think there's real opportunity there. But like any new league, it's a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of patience, and supporters. Whether it's corporate support or media support or donor support, you just need people to align with you and be shoulder to shoulder and watching the growth.
Well, that's right. I mean, the cornerstone of the NGB world is, you ticked off 3 of the 4. The 4th one, obviously, sponsors. So you got donors, you got sponsors, you got media coverage, and then you've got events that ostensibly, A, people want to go to and see live, B, and tickets can be sold to it, and C, that's when the media comes in because they get those rights, and then more awareness, more coverage, more popularization of the particular sport. Every NGB would love to be where in the off years USA Swimming or USA Gymnastics is on the summer side, and where US Ski and Snowboard is on the winter side. And then you've got events that sort of aggregate those, right? So X Games, as an example, has done a pretty darn good job of bringing to the media landscape sort of an extravaganza, which features a lot of sports, many Olympic sports, others not yet, but have designs to be. It's, to your point, it's a tough putt. And, some have easier putts than others, but ultimately the health of Olympic sport, to your earlier point, NCAA colleges here in the U.S., B, the, continued support at the, if you will, the IOC, the NBC sports level. My personal opinion, I don't see NBC ever giving up the Olympic broadcast rights. They might fragment.
Part of their DNA, right?
It's
really important, and it goes back to Dick Ebersol, and really it was the most important thing for them, and the storytelling. I think NBC to this day is the best storytelling of the networks, and so the Olympics belong there, and I would hope that they will remain there. And without any disrespect to other networks, NBC has earned the right, I guess, to continue to have it. And look, at the end of the day, the Olympics are only as strong as the athletes, right? Because that is what it's all about. And so continuing to look for ways to support athletes, their journey to get to a podium. It's easy to get excited about the 18 days of an Olympiad. There's a lot of work that goes into an athlete being able to deliver on that stage in that time frame. A lot of people, coaches and physios and nutritionists and therapists and all these things to go into it, and the physical and mental journey to deliver on the global stage, especially for an individual sport athlete. It's even that much harder, I think, and so much more taxing. Making sure that we understand that and have a system in place to support those athletes and that endeavor so that we can celebrate them in LA or Salt Lake or wherever it might be.
Right. But I would just make this point that in our earlier discussion around women's sports, the emergences, of NWSL, WNBA, and a couple of nascent leagues in addition to that on the women's side, women's hockey as an example. 2 very significant women are in global leadership roles in the Olympic movement. Obviously, Sarah Hirschland, as CEO of the USOPC, has been in that chair for, I want to say, 6 years, maybe 7 years, 8 years, I don't know, something like that.
Could be longer, yeah.
Could be longer. And then on the IOC side, first time ever, a woman takes the CEO role at the IOC, Kirsty Coventry. I want to say Zimbabwe, a swimmer, but she honed her craft here in the U.S. in the NCAA swimming cauldron, right?
Right.
So, I think it's just such a great time for sport, as chaotic as it is, and we touched on a number of the points of chaos, I just think we're in for a great ride here over the next 6, 8, 10 years.
No question. Like I think we're really fortunate between, and I think because the U.S. presents such a great opportunity for these big events to come here, and so between World Cups and Olympics, winter and summer, we've got our plate full. But it's an exciting time for sport just everywhere, and I think content is obviously king, and just the ability to access content 24/7, whether it's streaming or on your phone or whatever it might be. It just makes that immediacy is so much fun, and it's what got us excited about being in the industry a long time ago, because you boil it down, it's all about the fan, and it's about that consumer experience and the memories that are created, and that shared experience, which is what I really fundamentally believe in.
I know my oldest daughter was in the stands in the 1999 World Cup at the Rose Bowl, and she still, to this day, talks about it in the most superlative of terms as a shared experience with her club team. Listen, Jeff, we've got a few minutes left, and I like to ask each of our guests a few questions. First question for you is about work-life balance. I mean, listen, particularly in the world of live events and sport, where you can, if you're a hockey executive, you're at the arena 41 nights a year, right? So how does faith play a role with you in your work-life balance, in your family? I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Well, I'm all about my family, right? So very, very blessed to be married, coming up on 27 years. We were together a long time before that, so well over 30 years together. 2 daughters now, one out of college, one graduating in 2 weeks from tomorrow, which is scary to think about, being permanent empty nesters, I guess. But all of that, faith, family, it's foundational. It's the most important things. Having that balance is challenging in a sport environment where, depending on the job, a couple of the jobs I've had were literally 365. I remember getting yelled at by a football agent on Christmas Day in my basement. He wanted the contract, and he was in London, so they'd already had their Christmas dinner. But that just is the reality of it. And at times, maybe I could have done a better job of putting the phone away. Hopefully, I did a pretty good job. But you always wonder. You look back, you hope that. And I didn't really miss anything with my kids growing up, which is awesome. And they both played soccer growing up, so they wanted to come to the stadium for games, and so they were one of my favorite experiences. You mentioned your daughter being at the '99 World Cup. We won the 2010 MLS Cup, and we're on the field, and the trophy presentation, and the confetti goes up in the air, and everyone's eyes are on the players and the trophy and ownership, all those things. My kids were back behind everything on the ground doing snow angels and all the confetti on the ground. And so that's a memory that really I'm the only one that probably has it, because I saw it and it was with them down there. But just really special. So you hopefully take advantage of the opportunity to spend a lot of time together, maybe in some different ways. Being involved in soccer for a long time, we didn't take too many summer vacations, right? It was all about work back then. But we had a great, hopefully I believe they had a great childhood, and the balance was there for the most part.
Well, as a parent, you go through several stages. The early stage where you know everything and they rely on you, and then all of a sudden you don't know anything and they know everything. But I'm here to tell you that worm also turns, because as they grow older and they start to understand the broader responsibilities of being an adult and how to craft a career, how to ultimately fall in love, get married, build a family, whatever, those perspectives start to change in a really fun, very cool way. And you're not far away from that. So
Yeah.
you have that to look forward to.
No, and I'm excited about that. I'm not in any rush for them to get married. They're still young, but my oldest is working in sports and working in New York City, living in Brooklyn and commuting, and which is hard in New York to slug it out and spend time on the subway and all the things you do. And it's funny because she comes home and she's always frustrated that she has to make dinner every night. So I think they start to realize that was pretty fun. Put dinner on the table for you. And my youngest is, she's realizing it's all ending at college, and I told her, look, we all miss college. You never stop missing college. It's just, so that's, I'm not going to pretend you're not going to miss it, but you've got lifelong relationships, and so it's been a great career, great family, great journey, all predicated on great friendships and just people. And that's, at the end of the day, I'm about people and collaboration and shared experiences.
Well, it's pretty obvious by the way you've conducted yourself in this session. This has been awesome. Couple more questions. This is a fun one. The concert that you attended, I don't care when, that is your most favorite one that featured a female-led band or a female artist?
That's easy, actually. 2 summers ago, September, so important because fall in Colorado, at Red Rocks, which is arguably the greatest concert facility in the world. Brandi Carlile, seventh row center, playing with the Colorado Symphony Orchestra. Just a phenomenal. She's amazing anyway, and then the orchestra added to that. And so that was a very special, Colorado late summer, early fall night with a world-class artist who just is a songbird. And she was amazing.
Right. I love those mashups. You take a Brandi Carlile, who is an A++ lister, with a symphony orchestra at Red Rocks. How does it get much better than that?
It is that good. Anyone listening to this, hopefully they realize it's no hyperbole there. It was
Right. So next question is sort of a companion piece to that one. We've all experienced over the last 10 years the proliferation of streaming, sports, shows, news, content, whatever genre, from Apple TV to Netflix to Prime Video to Hulu to, more emerging platforms virtually by the day. So this is an entertainment question. In the world of streaming, what has been either the show you're watching now or the most favorite show you've watched kind of late?
Well, again, if you notice my bottom shelf there is the Slow Horses series. I love Slow Horses on Apple, both for the mystery of it and the acting, and Gary Oldman is fantastic. But I'm a massive Anglophile anyway. London's my favorite city in the world, so just the vibe in London to me is really special, and so I love that series and anxiously await the next season, which I think is coming out in September.
Yeah, it is. And I'm just like you. I've voraciously consumed every single episode of that show. And in addition to, Gary Oldman being extraordinary and, Kristen Scott Thomas also being extraordinary, and the way those two interact throughout the episodes, the writing of that show is extraordinary. And I should know, I don't, but it's sort of Aaron Sorkin-esque, if I could even, overlay Aaron Sorkin on this, of, the West Wing fame. But yeah, no, it is a great show. I love that you called that out. And for anybody who listens to this who hasn't seen it, Slow Horses, Apple TV, you got to see it. The last question, and this is kind of what I call the pithy one. This is your favorite word. Word is sort of a touchstone or a North Star to you. Your favorite word and why?
I've been lately just really gravitating towards the word joyful. I think for a couple of reasons. One, I think we lack it a little bit in the world these days. I think there's a malaise globally for lots of reasons, whether that's economic, whether it's geopolitical, war, all these things are happening. And I think we need more joyfulness in our life and in our world. And I think for me that comes from spending time with people, whether that's friends or family or things like this. Just being able to interact with people, I think, is so special. And I think preferably in person. I think these types of platforms are wonderful, and Zooms and Teams and all these things have given us the ability to connect to people. But spending time together and shared experiences, whether that's sport or music or art or food, I think is the types of things that make life worth living. I call it living a full cup life, and I think those are the things that matter. So just seeking out or hopefully providing opportunities for joyful experiences and conversation.
Well, that's well said, Jeff. And I got to tell you, it's really been a joy the last however many minutes sharing experience with you, having a great conversation. And thank you so much for being a guest on the Best Boss Ever podcast.
No, thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. And I'll be a listener now going forward as well.
Well, thank you for that.